It's an honor to be here. And CPB in the place to be. CPB in the place to be. Doing marvelous things for the community. Along with PBS, yes, they're still the best, touching people's lives from east to west. And NPR, shining like a star, always there for us no matter where we are.
I loved that you had someone from the hip-hop community, and I think people got a kick out of him saying, PBS, NPR, y'all are hip-hop because you're telling the stories.
The agenda's amazing. Disruption, innovation.
How do we understand what this force means so that we can harness it and innovate ourselves?
By having CPB come in and address these bigger platform issues is huge for me.
This forum, this gathering, could not just be about thinking, but moving those thoughts into action.
We've got to look at ways to do things differently.
I do think we're getting to the point where a major disruption is going to happen.
To be able to be here and talk to like-minded folks about changes that are coming and about being ahead of the changes, I think is really important.
People want to get involved. People want to make a difference, but you have to start by believing each and every one of us in this room can make a difference, and we should get involved.
We have to look at every quote-unquote disruption as a real opportunity.
We want to be part of solving these problems and not just talking about them.
To really have the conversation that's necessary to figure out what's going on in these communities and then to figure out how to help them, we need people like you to do the work that you're doing.
That really touched the nerve, and I think that is something that public media can only do and has done for so many years.
The session on funding and all the different funding models I thought was also really good. A lot of takeaways that I can use back at the station.
We're all thinking about how our young people are better able to become engaged citizens.
Public media can play such an important role in telling stories of what human lives look like so other people can see possibilities.
This is a wonderful chance to come together and hear what other professionals in public media are doing to engage in their communities, start with a community-based model of what the needs are, and to learn how we can put it all together.
So many experts in their fields for you to pull on is just a wonderful opportunity.
What's the secret sauce of making sure that our education system, our higher education system is working? It's the degree to which we make this relevant to a career.
How people make media choices is increasingly driven by issues of culture, affinity, and social capital and social networks.
If we keep going at this level, having this caliber of speaker and this great information that's already been disseminated, I mean, the sky's the limit.
I definitely feel like I learned something new. We're just all pumped with our sleeves up and ready to go. What next?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President and CEO of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Patricia Harrison. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the CPB Thought Leader Forum, where we will find out what's next. First of all, I want to thank you all for overcoming challenges of weather and canceled flights and long lines at the airport to be part of this NETA and CPB conference and Thought Leader program, and I believe at the end of the day you'll be glad you did. It's so great to be here in Utah, reminding us that public media, the content and services we provide, are really meant to connect to people with many different experiences and reflect this country's great geographic diversity, urban and rural. And I think we saw this diversity reflected last night at the NETA Awards event. So I want to once again congratulate the nominees, the winners. I think you're all winners. And also, you are examples of what Colonel Campbell calls a heritage of excellence. So I want to thank you again, Eric, Laura, James, John, and Molly, for a very dynamic start to this conference. I want to also thank CPB board member Liz Simbler. She actually left sunny Florida to be here with us today, and her support and commitment to our education mission means so much. So welcome to you. Thank you so much, Liz. Last night was such a great reminder that the people who are attracted to public media as a career are truly mission focused. And our job is really to ensure that this mission stays vibrant and relevant to rising generations. So for the next 2 days, building on the momentum of last year's first Thought Leader Forum and working in partnership with NETA and each of you, we're going to explore how we can and will make that happen. Together, we're going to create a roadmap for a very innovative future with a focus on educational content and services that will meet new needs in schools, the community, the workplace. But we know that innovation doesn't just happen overnight. It takes trial and error, and it really takes long-term commitment, risk-taking, creativity, imagination. As Colonel Campbell said, it starts in our heads. Plus, and this is very important, a collaborative and supportive workplace culture. So what exactly are we talking about when we use the word innovation? Because there are so many definitions. I think actually there are 300,000 definitions of the word. But the one which guides me, and it has for a long time, is from John Keogh's book. He wrote it several years ago, maybe as long as 10 years ago, and it's called Innovation Nation. And he defines innovation as the ability of individuals, companies, and entire nations to continuously create their desired future. The key words are continuously create a desired future. You don't arrive, you just keep moving on. But it's a great feeling to think you can shape a future. So I think it begins with changing our minds, perhaps, looking at things differently, embracing cultural change, as well as new technology. So often when we think of innovation, we only think of the hardware. And it means, and I think this is very difficult, and we're trying it at CPB, tapping into talent beyond titles, because good ideas can and do come from anyone and anywhere. So you have to create that climate of inclusion where people feel free to say, what if we did it this way? And it can mean, for example, reframing how we serve our communities. And I believe we've already begun that process very successfully when we first moved away from thinking outreach and moved toward engagement and a real partnership and listening to the communities we serve. And it means local matters. This is where everything starts. And even 10 years ago, John Keogh advised, think local and scale up. It also means understanding that diversity and inclusion are key elements of a strong public media future. And of course, it does mean investing in new technologies and employing them in innovative ways. CPB's digital initiatives have already helped stations attract new donors, connect to new audiences, and expand the reach of local content. But we're only just beginning. It takes a long-term commitment. The democratization of media has also changed how we teach, how we learn. And that's why we felt it was important for CPB to work with GBH to fund a reset, an update for PBS Learning Media, featuring new learning models with interactive lessons. We're also funding innovative national children's content, such as the PBS Kids 24/7 channel and live stream. And tomorrow, you're going to learn more about Molly of Denali. And this is a groundbreaking, nationally distributed series featuring informational text as a teaching technique, and the first series with an Alaskan native as the lead character. One of my favorite quotes, author unknown, well, actually it's a question, and I've used it a lot, and it means something to me, to remind me when you get overwhelmed with thinking about the future, the great unknown future. When is the best time to plant an oak tree? And the answer is 25 years ago. So when is the second best time? And the answer is now. As we go through our day, think of these, I know, it requires a stretch of imagination, as oak trees, but it was the best we could do. Oak trees. So through our time together over the next few days, We hope to identify options to deal with both the now and the future, and not just recognize opportunities, but create them. To redefine what does it mean to be a public media leader, an educator, a connector, an advocate for lifelong learning, but even more importantly, relearning. But we don't want this forum to be just speaker-focused with great thoughts never turning into great action. So, in the spirit of last year's forum, when CPB announced our new education innovation grants to 50 stations to develop their plans and ideas and keep the forum thinking going, the momentum going, we will be announcing a new round of grants this year tailored specifically to stations' innovation needs and progress. Applause now, please. Thank you. At last year's forum, we also announced the next phase of American Graduate Getting to Work, and grants were provided to 19 stations to advance education and connection to career readiness, and a lot of good things have happened since then. The American Graduate Initiative is now in its 8th year. We made a long-term commitment. 8 years, Liz. Where did they go? I want to thank Jack Elmish and the 9 Network team. We could not have done it without you. Thank you so much, Jack. And Deb Sanchez, and Michael Fragale, and Stephanie Aronson, and the CPB education team, and of course, each of you who really made this initiative a game changer for public media. You made a significant difference in so many lives. And now we're turning our attention to the demands of a changing workplace. It's a little scary because there is no clear path. But what we do know is that it will be defined by learning, relearning, training, retraining. So the challenge is there are jobs out there, but potential employees are not prepared to get them. And this is what is referred to as the nation's skills gap. I have to tell you that American Graduate Getting to Work is already receiving high marks from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and that's quite an accomplishment in this politically divisive environment. And leaders from business and government have recognized its potential. So we had an extraordinary thing happen last fall. CPB partnered with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on its Talent Forward Workforce Conference, National Workforce Conference. Between sessions, the audience of the top 300 business and government leaders watched American Graduate videos that were produced by you, local stations that showed the path to these in-demand jobs. This was such a great opportunity for public media to share the stage with the Chamber's CEO, Tom Donahue, and the first time that public media stations were prominently featured throughout this prestigious conference. Why do you think that was? Because partners such as the Chamber and others recognize that locally owned and operated public media stations bring so much to the table. We are the connectors at a time when people are disconnected. And the fact is now more than ever, we not only have an important role to play that we have been playing in our civil society, we have a responsibility. And I saw this responsibility demonstrated recently in Ohio. It was a unique public media collaboration, innovative, digital first, broadcast, engagement, part of American Graduate Getting to Work, an exciting program with young people statewide, and 2 gubernatorial candidates, and one of whom is now governor and has a very fond spot in his heart for public media in Ohio. Later today, you will hear from your Ohio colleagues and why this worked so well. So the question that is always before us is how can we truly continue to improve, attract new audiences, increase our supporters, and work in a real partnership with people we serve. And the fact is, so many businesses and organizations are struggling to answer that question. Now, of course, some are motivated, of course, by the bottom line, and others by mission. But public media is unique, as we've effectively served and connected with the American people for more than 50 years. But it's a track record we really want to keep for the next 50. Recently, world-acclaimed conductor Jean-Andrea Noseda, he's the super talented musical director of the National Symphony Orchestra. He took the orchestra to the Columbia Heights Education Campus in Washington, D.C. And this is what is part of the NSO's, what they call NSO in Your Neighborhood, their community outreach program. They are trying to attract younger, more diverse audiences for classical music. And they've invested time and resources over the past 8 years, the way we have with American Graduate, to do this. So it's a very worthwhile initiative. But a Washington Post article reported that while some of the students were excited for the concert, some were distracted, and others were unsure when it was appropriate to clap or respond or connect. And the fact is, it is hard to break through to younger audiences in a media-saturated environment. And that's why if we are to connect and keep connecting for the next 50 years with audiences diverse in age, race, gender, geography, we really need to know more about them. We need to develop a real relationship, not just a drive-by or one-off connection. And we may have to reframe how we present our content, how we talk about it to better align with the interests and needs of an increasingly diverse America. And CPB also needs to invest in more research and data to put us in that always be learning and listening mode. So today is all about innovative thinking, communicating, refreshing, and reframing our approach. Our goal is to have a very robust and engaging partnership with the owners of public media, the American people. And I know that's a lot on all of your collective plates. And one forum is not going to provide the magic key. But we have to start planting those oak trees right now. And this forum is truly meant to give you some time to interact and think as you step away from the busy day-to-day of running a station. Our speakers are truly among the best, which is important because you all are the best of public media, and you will shape the outcome. So let's put our thinking caps on, start the day, and our innovative engines. Thank you. CPB is so fortunate to have a team of professionals dedicated to public media and committed to its long-term relevancy. And some of them are with us today, and I could not be more proud of their work, especially when it comes to education. Senior Vice President Deb Sanchez, who I believe knows each and every one of you, is an example of innovative leadership. Please welcome Deb.
Thank you, Pat, and good morning, everyone. I am really looking forward to the next few days, and it really started last night. So the awards ceremony was really a reflection of what excellence does look like in the system, and we were so proud to be here to see that yesterday. And through the CPB NETA partnership, we continue to build on the Education Innovation Foundation we created last year in Washington, D.C. Thanks to CPB's CEO, Pat Harrison, and Eric Hippa, NENA's president and CEO, for their leadership and vision. And Pat really articulated the truth that we really live in exciting and challenging times. Now, the cartoon that you see on the screen may seem a little far-fetched, but if you have a teen in your life like I do, you will know that a text saying, "Mom, what's for dinner?" from somewhere in your house, it's pretty real. This is the level of communication that we experience. So we are excited. We're excited because technology has accelerated learning. It's really changed the workplace and provided us all of us, with the ability to shape our own learning experiences. Technology has also challenged the phrase lifelong learning in a very bold way. Rising generations will have to learn and relearn as workplace demands continue to change, and those changes will impact how and where they access information. We, all of us, have an important role to play in serving our youngest citizens, but also staying with them through all the stages of their lives. So how do we do this? In education, we at CPB are prioritizing our work in 3 critical areas. First, in content, to ensure that the design and format of video and audio content has a high educational value and will help us reach more learners on more platforms. Next priority is user experience. While the design of content and the user experience really go hand in hand, we need to ensure that content is in a format designed with that platform in mind to reach all of our audiences, educators, students, families, and with particular attention to underserved populations in rural and high-poverty communities. And finally, to work with all of you through forums like this to share trends on the fast-changing media environment and offer opportunities for you to expand your work. A recent survey by Pearson Education found that nearly half of teens and young adults spend at least 3 hours on YouTube every day. No surprise. Instagram has more than 1 billion users. Nearly 200 million people use Snapchat daily. Now, what do they use these platforms for? A 2018 Pew survey cited that these platforms help young people to connect to each other and allows them to find relevant content about their world. We want to make sure that the content they find connects them back to public media. Like we did last year, we will dive into discussions like these throughout the day. We will also hear from station colleagues who pursued new ideas with CPB's Education Innovation Grants. The Innovation Grants provided stations with an opportunity to discover ways they could strengthen their educational content and services, to engage with new, young, and diverse audiences, and to meet the growing need for lifelong learning. As Pat said, 50 stations participated, and this process really affirmed that education is an opportunity for innovation. WKU PBS wanted to establish an employment fellowship for underserved students at Western Kentucky University. As they began to learn more about different underserved groups at the university, they narrowed their focus to college students with autism spectrum disorder. The Education Innovation Grant gave David Brinkley and Molly Switek the ability to dive deeper into the resources needed to transition these students into the workforce and what employers needed to support them. This led to the launch of the Brinkley Fellowship Program to provide job training for students with autism spectrum disorder and to work towards inclusion. It's really a wonderful project, so if you see David or Molly, I encourage you to stop by and ask them about it. Now, please welcome 3 station leaders to our conversation who will share their experience with us today. Vicki Lawson, General Manager of East Tennessee PBS, John Rubin, Director of Education Services at Rhode Island PBS, and Tom Extell, General Manager of Vegas PBS. Vicki, let's start with you.
Good morning, and thank you so much. We appreciate the support of CPB on the Innovation Grant, and we are excited to research and to do the possibility of what we call our Tennessee Prep. We use the Education Innovation Planning Grant to research the validity of our ideal to create ACT tutoring courses for broadcast and make available for all students in Tennessee. Since the ACT is now a graduation requirement in the state and Tennessee falls below the national average of the ACT cumulative score. First and foremost, we learned there was a definite need But the need differed from party to party. For instance, the local Knox County schools were in need as they only had 4 out of 14 high schools meeting the newly established satisfactory score of 21. And in fact, one of the local high schools only had 4 students out of their graduating class of 500 meet that grade. We learned that the local community college had a different need. They were having students coming into school unprepared for college-level instructions. Students are dropping out or taking longer than expected to graduate, both of which costs the school money. They want to provide instructors for the programs to help give students insight into working at a college level, and that's where we come in, by being able to provide video tutoring throughout our community. We are currently in the fundraising stage of the project and are about a third of the way. We believe that the program will help further East Tennessee PBS as a vital community partner, providing the vital and needed educational tools to everyone in the community. We anticipate that this program will open doors for additional educational opportunities, and even now we are being asked to come to the table in other community education programs as we become more than top of mind as a partner who can provide valuable solutions, support, and programs that are desperately needed in East Tennessee and throughout our state. I want to thank Deb for allowing me to be here today. And as Pat said, when you're planting the trees, we have students that we want to give them, that seed is planted, but we want to be able to be the source that continues to fertilize and water that tree so that they have the best opportunity going forth in their future. Thank you again.
Thank you, Vicki. John?
Good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here with colleagues from across the country, and thanks, Deb. The overarching goal of Rhode Island PBS's Education Innovation Project is to make 21st century technology-based instructional resources accessible for practical use in classrooms. In this case, virtual reality-based content with our project, Virtual Reality. Regarding this specific instructional challenge we're trying to meet, we're raising awareness of a major local historical event in Rhode Island, the burning of the Gaspee in 1772. Briefly, the Gaspee affair involved a group of Rhode Island patriots causing a British tax enforcement ship to run aground, and then they set fire to it in an act of bold rebellion. This episode is a prominent part of Rhode Island curriculum, but we'd like to help this important event in American history take its rightful place as the first strike of the American Revolution, 1 year before the Boston Tea Party. So we aim to create the first Gaspee-related resources on PBS Learning Media. However, we're taking it a step further than traditional media content through key partnerships with local virtual reality designers. A team at Brown University has created an immersive VR experience of the Gaspee affair. And for this planning phase of the Education Innovation Project, we're identifying and outlining the necessary steps to adapt this VR experience for easily accessible distribution to teachers and students. In particular, we're assessing what will be needed to create an online browser-based version and a version for interactive cardboard viewers. In addition, we're complementing the technology with curricular support materials for upper elementary through high school. 2 local Rhode Island educators are outlining local and national standards-aligned lesson plans and instructional activities to support use in the classroom. We also hope to produce a package of career videos and support resources that profile the wide range of exciting career opportunities in the VR field. For the planning phase, we're producing a pilot segment in both traditional video and 360-degree video format. All partners involved in the project are on a steep learning curve around the adaptation of high-tech media content to classroom use. So it's been a very exciting process. Ultimately, at a larger scale implementation phase, we look forward to making these state-of-the-art, high-quality resources available free of charge for all teachers and students, regardless of zip code, to help them engage in a truly unique way with instructional content. So look forward to being with you the next few days, and I like the metaphor of the oak tree, and I will be looking for acorns throughout the week. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Tom?
Vegas PBS has spent 20 years honing its K-12 services. But with this CPB grant, we are going into a new era. The Colorado River is in a 19th year of drought. The water behind the Hoover Dam has dropped 140 feet. And if it drops another 8 feet, we will have 25% water rationing imposed by the federal government that will affect San Diego, Los Angeles, Tucson, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Las Vegas, the central agricultural region of California and Mexico. It will be a public disaster, and has already engendered strong interstate competition. It's going to get worse. Education is critical to help people understand what they can do to save water. And we need to start with children, and we intend to also extend this education to our neighboring states. It's hard to believe because Las Vegas is not known for its lack of investment in entertainment. But even though our community has grown 900% in the last 40 years, the amount of water we withdraw from the river is the same as it was when our population was 9 times less. Las Vegas is the most sophisticated community in the desert Southwest in terms of water conservation. We have created, with CPB assistance, a 9-state advisory committee, and we are creating educational materials that we will share in our own community, and we will make available to others within this threatened region. And so in the remaining seconds, our first educational module is to encourage all of you to look at that water glass on your table and treasure it. If it's empty, you will not be able to water your oaks.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Well, thank you to all for taking the time to share what you learned in the process, and also for connecting the story of the oak tree throughout your presentations. I'm so impressed. Now, these examples and others inspired us to do more. In the coming year, we plan to offer additional support for your local education work, as Pat mentioned a few minutes ago, but with variation, because every station project will have shorter or longer on-ramps to design, test, and implement. So while we want to fund big ideas that can be scaled, we also see the need to work with you on your innovation journey, on those ideas that need a longer runway. And to guide our work together, we plan to fund research to help us understand who we are reaching and engaging today in our education work. We plan this research to help us look forward to new education strategies, to new donors, and different funding models. We're excited to share more information about these opportunities with you in the months ahead, so please stay tuned. Now, to keep the innovation momentum going, we've created a forum that allows for maximum participation from all of you, because we know you all have a lot to say. Following last year's forum, you told us you wanted more time to share ideas and ask questions of our speakers, and we've built in time to do that. We also encourage you to share your thoughts with those who are not physically here, but following us on social media. Please use social media and hashtag #PubMediaEducates to share your thoughts and ideas. To facilitate your questions in real time, we are again using an online tool called Slido. Now I'm going to switch into my teacher mode and my former test proctor mode to walk you through the Slido process and get you ready to use this platform. So using Slido, you can ask questions, vote for other people's questions, and answer polls. Slido is easy to use from your phone, tablet, or computer, but you need to start by going to slido.com. So this would be a great time to make sure you're connected to the hotel's Wi-Fi. using the NETA 2019 network. The password is leaders19 with a capital L. So FYI, this is the one time we're encouraging you to look down at your phone during a presentation on stage. So please open your browsers and take a moment to find this through Slido. So to join the conversation, you'll be prompted to enter an event code, which is Pub Media Educates, and it's not case sensitive. From here, make sure you're in the morning general session room. We'll be using this tool throughout the day, so you'll join the conversation based on the session or room you're in. In Slido, you can ask questions anonymously, or you can include your name. And if you include your name, it's easier for us to get back to you with any additional detail if your question requires that. You can also vote on questions that have been asked, so the highest ranked questions will rise to the top. We will also be using Slido's polling feature to get a quick sense of where we are today and what people in the room think. So let's give this a try. So I hope you've all logged into Slido, and we're going to invite you to participate in our first poll. So on screen is our first poll question. Question 1, which audience do you think is the most important for your station to grow in the next 5 years? We ask that you please select the most important audience out of the 4 on screen. 1 is children and families, 2 is teachers, 3 is young adults, and 4 is lifelong learners. It's pretty cool to see it in real time and all the answers populated. And now we're going to follow up on your readiness to reach the audience that you've selected. So question 2, how ready is your station to grow this new audience? 1 being totally unready, and 5 being completely ready. In the middle. That's a safe place to be, right? So it's nice to see the results on screen, and we will have a discussion about what this all means at the end of today in our closing session. So thank you for participating. It seemed to work, which we're really happy about, and the Wi-Fi worked, so I'm really thrilled. So without further ado, I'd like you to please join me in welcoming our 2 special guests this morning, Nat Kendall-Taylor and Nina Simon. Nat is CEO of the Frameworks Institute, a communications think tank in Washington, D.C. Nat is an anthropologist by training and leads a team of social scientists and communication specialists who measure how people understand complex issues. Pat and I heard Nat speak at an America's Promise Alliance event this past summer, and we were struck by the way that reframing an issue can help a message have the maximum impact. Nina is executive director of the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History and author of the book, The Art of Relevance, which explores how mission-driven organizations can matter more to more people. As an industry that talks about relevance a lot, we thought Nina had a fresh approach to this topic, bringing a modern observation of the why of relevance. Nat and Nina, thanks for being here today. Nat, let's start with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Good job. Hello, everyone, and good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. So I want to start just by thanking CPB and Pat and Deb for inviting me to be here today. I will try to spend the next 20 minutes showing you that this was not an absolutely disastrous decision. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really, really excited to get the chance to talk to you about framing for the next 20 minutes. And I realize it's totally sad and utterly pathetic that I get this excited to talk about framing, but after many hours of deep introspection, I'm totally okay with my geekdom in framing, so you don't need to feel too badly for me. I wanna start by telling you why I'm here. And don't worry, I don't mean in kind of the deep philosophical sense of that phrase. It's not gonna be that kind of talk, I promise. I mean, why am I standing up in front of you about to spend the next 20 minutes of your lives talking about communications, given that I actually have no training in communications? Don't worry, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. What I am by training is what's called a psychological anthropologist. And what I do is study how culture influences the way that people think. How people use culture, frequently without knowing it, to make sense of messages, to process information, and to formulate and make decisions. And when most people hear that I'm an anthropologist, I think the typical reaction is that people feel bad for me. What horrible life decisions this gentleman has made. And I say to these people, I say, Mom, Dad, anthropology is actually really valuable in the real world. And specifically for our purposes here today, can help all of us, each and every one of us in this room, become a better, a more efficient, a more effective communicator. And so that's what I'm going to spend my time talking with you about today. I'm going to try to, in 20 minutes, help you understand, begin to answer this question, which I'll be discussing additionally in the master class after this session, of why framing matters in the work that you all do, why you should listen to anything that I have to say about framing. And I'm going to restrict myself. I have about like 20 answers to this question, but they don't fit in 20 minutes. So I'm going to do 2, okay? And the first one is that this fundamental truism that comes from, I used to say, 50 years of social and behavioral science, but now I actually have to say 60 years of social and behavioral science, that understanding is frame dependent. Now, I realize that kind of sounds like academic-ese, like gobbledygook that someone with a PhD said, and in fact it is. But what this means more directly, in a more straightforward way, is that it's not just your content that matters. It's not just what you have to say that matters, but actually how you say it, how you choose to present information. The choices that go into that are of incredible consequence in terms of whether your information, whether your ideas are going to land, whether they're going to have traction, and importantly, whether they're going to achieve the desired outcomes that you have in shifting, in changing the way that people think, feel, and are willing to act on these issues that we are so committed to. So after each of these 2 reasons, I'm not going to have you take my word for any of it. I'm going to go back and show you some research that we've done at Frameworks or that other social and behavioral scientists have done that really illustrate the point. So in this first one, I'm going to use an example that comes from work that we've done not here in the United States, but work that we've done on the issue of parenting in Australia. And so to give you just a brief sense of kind of where this field is and where they have been for the last, I'm going to be kind and say 30 years, but it's probably more like 40 or 50 years, is that they have been, I think intentionally but also unintentionally, advancing the frame that you all see on the screen. They have been presenting the issue of parenting through this frame via this idea of effective parenting, right? And this normally consists of do's and don'ts, kind of finger-wagging lists of things that you as parents should and should not be doing. And it focuses on this idea that we need to make sure that parents are basically doing the right thing. Okay? So in doing a lot of qualitative research in Australia, we started to see that when presented with this frame, people, members of the general public, would go in certain directions, not all of which were incredibly positive in being supportive of parenting programs. So we found that when a different frame was used, can you go back for me? There we go. When a frame of child development was used, which is like maybe to you all now seems kind of subtle in its difference, but is exactly what I mean by a frame change. So when you go from talking about effective parenting to talking about what kids need to develop in healthy and positive ways, we saw, relatively anecdotally, that the conversation completely changed. Okay? And so when we see this conversation change kind of dynamic happening, we take these results and we do more robust empirical work. So in this case, we ran an experiment. And in this experiment, we've tested these two frames. So this is an experiment that's done with about 6,000 Australians, nationally representative sample. And the way that it works is some of the respondents are randomly assigned to read a message of effective parenting, which is that frame that you saw on the previous slide. Other folks are randomly assigned to read the message via the frame of child development. And then everyone answers a set of questions to determine their support for policies that support Australian parents and families, and also their intentions to behave in ways that would advance the issue. Are they willing to write a letter? Are they willing to donate? Are they willing to volunteer? Kind of some of these civic participation behaviors. And what you're going to see on this next click in 1 second is the way in which hearing these two frames affects people's support for policy and their behavioral intentions. Okay? So click, please. So I don't know the kind of statistical acumen of this audience, but here's a quick stats lesson. Up is good, and down is bad. So what you can see in this graph is a very unfortunate message, right? The idea that the field had been advancing, as I was saying, kind of kindly for 30 years, but probably more like 40 or 50 years, with an astonishing amount of money and resources, is not only a waste of every one of those words, but it is actually depressing people's support for policies. It is making them less likely, less willing to engage on the issue. That's the bad news. The good news is that by changing this frame, instead of finger wagging about what you should be doing as a parent, framing the conversation around what kids need to develop in healthy and positive ways has the exact opposite effect. It boosts support for those policies, and it makes people more likely, more willing to engage in the issue. So we, after this finding, kind of went through a whole bunch of research that was designed to figure out why this is, but one of the reasons is captured very nicely, click please, in the following meme. Guess what? Parents and members of society don't always appreciate having the finger wagged at them about their parenting. So, for those of you, click please, who are not convinced, as I am, by gorgeous gray and blue bar graphs, I want to show you what this looks like in living color. So I'm going to show you a quick before and after. There's going to be two clips. So the first one is going to be, it's a little bit confusing. It's going to be an Australian man in a mall in Alberta talking about addiction. Okay, don't let that complexity throw you. So I'll ask him a question about addiction. I'll present him with a frame. And then I'll ask him basically the same question after the frame presentation, although reworded so as not to seem obnoxiously researchy in what's going on here. Okay? The second clip you'll see is a woman from Birmingham, England, who's talking about adversity in early childhood. Same setup. She's asked a question before, she's presented with a frame, a way to think about the issue, and then she's asked basically the same question afterwards. And I want to, as I play this in 1 second, I want to ask you to be on the lookout for the differences between the before and the after. And I will just say that I've cherry-picked these two examples to set the bar appropriately low in terms of what's noticeable, okay? So you should all be able to see the differences. But look at their characteristics, okay? Click, please.
If somebody who's addicted to cigarettes chose to have those first few drags and rip the shit out of their throat and become addicted to cigarettes. Alcohol, they chose to have enough alcohol to end up addicted to it. As I said initially, leading to addiction is the susceptibility to addiction. And if you aren't exposed to it, and especially at sensitive times or at critical times, then you might not end up addicted.
So what do you think about stress?
It's a normal part of development, in my opinion.
What's the effect or the role of stress? Again, thinking about young kids.
That causes, in my opinion, long-term damage to a child. a lot of the emotional developments and the learnings that are meant to take place wouldn't happen in that situation.
So did people notice the difference between the before and after? I don't mean that in the sarcastic way that it just sounded. If you're not an expert on addiction, that first one can be, can you go back please? If you're not an expert on addiction, that first one can be a little bit hard to track, but basically what that guy is doing in a span of about 20 seconds is going from individual responsibility and willpower to biology and susceptibility of context. 20 seconds, right? And the only thing that happened in between is me explaining a bit about the biology of addiction. So I've seen that video well over 500 times now, and I am struck by two things that I'm not sure if you noticed. So did anyone notice what this Australian man in the mall in Alberta talking about addiction said in his after segment? As I said initially. He didn't say that initially, right? But it feels like he did, because he's been presented with a way of thinking about the issue that's cueing, that's bringing up a way that he has inside of him to think about it, that then becomes the lens through which he thinks and talks and answers the question. And the woman from Birmingham, did you notice what she said in her before and her after? Ooh, that one's tougher. She says, in my opinion, and then she says, in my opinion. And the idea is that those are both her opinions, but that they're different because of the way that the issue has been presented, because of the way that the issue has been framed. Okay, next slide, you're going to have to click through the video. Just double click. And the idea here is hopefully through those gorgeous, beautiful bars on the screen that you saw and the riveting video that I just showed you, that frames matter, right? The choices that you make and how you present information are of incredible consequence in terms of the things that people think, feel, and are willing to do as a result. So the second idea that I want to be clear about, and this is kind of one of my soapboxes as a researcher that I get out and I put on the stage and I metaphorically stand up on and yell from, is that most of the time these decisions about how a field frames its issue are made by an incredibly small group of deep issue experts sitting around a small table and saying, based on gut or guesswork, this is how we should do it. Right? And so one of my messages here today is that you don't need to do it that way. There are ways of asking and answering these questions such that you can know before you go when it comes to how you communicate about these issues. So the second idea is, unfortunately, that we all, every single person in this room, has a problem. And it's a communications problem, and it looks something like what you see on the screen in front of you right now. So I imagine that each and every one of you in this room who does communications, and that's a rhetorical slip that I've made there because every one of you does communications, has been in this position that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. You think you have the perfect way of talking about your issue. You try it out with two of your closest colleagues, and it is awesome. Like, what could happen when it goes out to normal people? That was a joke, guys. And you find that when it does, one of two things happen. So first of all, that thing that was so gripping, so awesome, so resonant for you isn't for those people with whom you're communicating. So that's the more fortunate of the two things that can happen, because the second thing is that thing which sent you and your colleagues in a particular direction, when it comes out of your mouth and goes out to the public, actually sends people in the exact opposite direction. So I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm going to give you a quick example of this that comes from work that we've done on the issue of early childhood, where members of the field, I imagine there are some of you in this room who kind of know this field, have done work in it, that members of this field talk a lot about stress and adversity. And they say things like, persistent stress can derail development and have negative long-term effects on health and well-being. So this is a direct quote. I've just made one minor change. In the original quote, negative was deleterious. But I've changed that so as to be mildly less obvious and obnoxious in the point that I'm about to make. So those of you who work on early childhood are probably either you're nodding your heads, you're nodding your head right here, or in your heads, you're nodding your head. Because this is kind of empirically been demonstrated to be true across a long period of time over a number of disciplines. Unfortunately, when this kind of a message goes out to people who are not developmental scientists, you get things that look and sound like this.
Life's hard. It's supposed to be hard. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You know, all the bad cliches you can think of. I mean, there's been people that have come from absolutely nothing to make it in whatever society's eyes deems success.
So that was it's a little bit hard for me to hear up here. I'm not sure everyone could hear out in the audience. So if you couldn't, I'll make it crystal clear. So that which we just heard on the right-hand side of the screen, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, is not what this expert intended when he or she opened his or her mouth to deliver this message, right? So there's something going on between the intention, the delivery of the message, and its actual effect, the way that it's received. And I won't leave you on the very edge of your seats for another second with that question. I'll tell you what it is. It is culture. Right? Culture, not in the kind of external artifact, Indiana Jones archaeology kind of sense of the word, which is still what my parents think I do, but rather culture in mind. Culture as a set of shared mental models, of patterns of reasoning, of assumption, of understandings that we share, that we walk around and have with us in our heads, that become active when we're presented with information framed in particular ways. So a lot of the work that I do, that I've done for the last 12 years at the Frameworks Institute, is in studying what is in that deceptively simple green bubble of culture. And the idea is that if you know what's in there, if you know the way, in this case, that people are likely to think about stress and adversity, you can be proactive and intentional and be the definition of strategic when it comes to how you position, how you frame your issues. So this is one of my all-time favorite quotes about culture that unfortunately did not come from an anthropologist. So JFK, way back in 1962, at a commencement speech at Yale University, said the following, that the great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. So in that last example, it is not that that gentleman who's at an outdoor mall in Arizona with the baseball cap, it's not that he's out to get kids, right? It's not that he doesn't like kids and wants them to do poorly. Instead, he has a way of thinking about stress and adversity that gets in the way of his ability to process, to understand, to make meaning of that message that's being delivered. Next slide, please. So the idea in this second point is that whether we like it or not, culture always complicates our job as communicators. And that to be a truly effective communicator, a strategic communicator, we must become a culture expert. We must understand the culture and its assumptions that we are sending our message out into in order to position and make better decisions about how we do that message sending. Slide, please. So I always like to end with a quote. This is a quote from Richard Rorty, who was a philosopher at the University of Chicago, one of the founders of the philosophical theory of pragmatism, who said that a talent for speaking differently rather than arguing well is the chief instrument of cultural change. And so I will leave you with that, two ideas that I hope you can take from this presentation. And at this point, I will ask, and I want to say Nina Simone, but it's Nina Simon, to please come to the stage. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the CPB and to Pat Harrison for having us. Thank you, Nat, for this beautiful setup. And I just want to remind you that both Nat and I will be taking Q&A together after this talk from Slido and other questions in the room. So I'm here to talk with you about relevance. My guess is there's something that matters to you that you wish mattered to more people. Maybe it's a program at your station. Maybe it's an issue that you wish you could frame in a way that people could hear it.